this video, we'll be covering the maintenance for the Shocker RSX regulator. In order to perform maintenance, you'll need factory grease, an O-ring pick, a 5/16 Allen key, and a 1/4 inch Allen key. To get started, we'll be removing this black piece right here. You'll notice that there's a silver piece down inside of it. That's actually the adjuster for velocity, so we don't want to mess with that right now. We're going to mainly look at the outer piece to remove. So to start, we're going to go ahead and take our 5/16 Allen key and unscrew that bolt. As you reach the final threads when removing the adjuster, you'll find that it is under spring tension. That spring tension is produced by the pressure of the velocity adjuster on the spring. So if that is too high and you're having trouble with the threads, go ahead and back out the velocity adjuster screw. Once you have that out, you can go ahead and set it aside, tilt the marker up, and you'll get your PRV spring, or pressure release valve spring. The next component we'll remove is the regulator piston. To do that, we're going to use our O-ring pick, reach up inside the regulator, and take that piston out. If you're very careful, you can actually see there's a small hole in the piston, which is the best place to get it with your pick. With the piston out, the next component will be the regulator spring itself. Go ahead and tilt the marker up, and it may take a tap, and it'll come on out. So now we have all the lower major components. The last piece we'll be reaching for is the upper cartridge. To do that, we're going to use our 1/4 inch Allen key, reach again up inside, lock into the upper portion of the reg, and turn it out. It's important to note that you're using the ball of the Allen key rather than the space in between the ball and the key. That makes sure you get a positive connection and make sure you're not damaging any components. If you're not using a ball end Allen key, you won't have that concern. So we're going to head and draw the piece out, and there you can see we have our upper regulator component. So now we've removed all the major pieces of the regulator. This is now just an empty tube. So we'll move on to lubrication and reinstallation. We're going to start by using factory grease. You always want to use the factory grease. Do not use any aftermarket grease or O-rings in the regulator or the rest of the marker. The first component we're going to look to reinstall is the last component we took out, and that's the upper regulator portion. So we're going to go ahead and take some grease and coat fairly liberally these top two O-rings. Now, you don't want to slop it with grease, but you do want to make sure they're well lubricated, because not only are they going to slide into the regulator, but they'll be turning with the threads. So we want to make sure they got a decent coat of grease on them. The lower O-ring on this upper portion simply needs enough grease to fill in the gaps ahead and behind the O-ring. I tend to put a small amount of lubricant just on the threads, just to make reinstallation that much easier. So we're going to take our 1/4 inch Allen key again, insert it into our upper regulator portion, and guide it back up into the regulator. Once it's there, we're going to turn until snug. Once snug, we're going to look to put our next component in, and that will be our regulator mainspring. That's just going to slide right up inside. And then we're going to do our regulator piston. We're going to lubricate the O-ring on the lower part of the regulator piston with just enough grease to fill in the gaps on either side of the O-ring. We're going to then take a small amount of grease and put it on the piston shaft. Now the reason we're doing that is because that's not going to lubricate an O-ring that's up inside the other regulator portion. So again, just going to guide it right in there. It's important that you use an Allen key to guide it in, make sure it's nice and straight, and that it doesn't bind. Once the piston's reinstalled, we're going to take our PRV spring and drop it back in. And then finally, the adjuster. What I like to do before putting the adjuster all the way back in is to make sure that it's backed out to reduce the spring tension. Once that's backed out, we're going to go ahead and put a small amount of lubricant here on the adjuster O-ring. Again, we're just putting enough lube here to fill in the gaps ahead of and behind the O-ring itself. Don't really need that much lubricant here. To put that in, we're going to go ahead and just slide it in the base. Now, I like to install it vertically so that I can make sure my PRV valve spring is straight and center. So we're going to use our 5/16 Allen key to press down against the spring tension and thread that in. Here, again, we just want to make sure it's nice and snug. And now we've finished the reinstallation of the regulator. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll make sure you get taken care of.